Well, dear God, I thank you so much for this day and this opportunity just to spend with these women who love you and who want to grow in their faith. I pray, God, that as we open up your word, God, that we'll just have hearts to understand and just ears to hear, Father, and to know what you intend, Father, for us to grab from tonight, Father. I thank you so much for all that you do for us. Thank you for BJ, who's always preparing such delicious little meals for us and perfect timing. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, just like last week, a couple of weeks ago, this one is another familiar passage. So we're actually going to be over in Matthew 14. Do you know what? Have you ever run into somebody in an unexpected place and you go, just like when Brenda asked me, do you know? And she gave me the name. I'm going, I know the name.
Mhm.
But then when you run into somebody, but they're not in the place where you're used to seeing them, it throws you off.
Mhm.
Yes.
You know, it's an unexpected encounter. It can be really hard to kind of place it. You go, who are you? Why are you here? This story kind of led me in a direction where there's an unexpected encounter with Jesus to a point where it was hard to recognize him. And I think there are times when we have these encounters, we're just unaware. So we're going to read this story. Very familiar again, is when Peter walks on water. Um, So in Matthew 14, if I can get a reader, we're going to read 22 through 33. Who wants to
I'll
take that?
read it.
Thank you.
Um, I'm in the NIV, the old one.
Okay.
Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, where he dismissed the crowd. Well, he dismissed the crowd. And after he had dismissed them, he went up to a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, but buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat and the wind died down, then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God.
Okay. You sound so beautiful reading. Thank you, Brenda.
Thanks.
All right, let's talk about this. First of all, what stands out for you? And then, of course, we're going to go through breaking it all down. What jumps out for you? We're all familiar. Chrissy.
One of the things that that grabbed my attention was when Peter said, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water." And so, like it to me, that means he couldn't see him because of the storm.
Mhm.
Like he recognized his voice,
Mhm.
but he wasn't sure because he couldn't see him. And it
Right.
just stands out to me that okay, because he knew it was Jesus by his voice, or if Jesus told him to do something,
Mhm.
then he had enough faith to do it even though he couldn't see him.
Yes. Yes. Very good. Thank you. Who else? What jumps out for you? Remember, I always say the lesson is in whatever God jumps, whatever he reveals to you.
It's interesting that the moment Peter takes his eyes off of Jesus and looks at what the wind and focuses on what else is around him, that's when he starts to sink.
Yep. When he starts looking at the outside. Bridget.
For me, it was both of those things that jumped out, like sort of like the doubt already, like, well, if it's really you, then tell me to come to you. And then like testing the water kind of figuratively and literally. And then also like when he says, you of so little faith, like, why did you doubt me? Like, of course I wasn't gonna let you drown.
Right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Angel?
For me, what's always stuck out about this for me is that by this time, like, all of the men in this boat have seen Jesus do so much and seen him work so many miracles, and they still have doubts. And it kind of like, it brings me comfort at times because I see God work in my life and then I have moments of doubt, and I've tended to like really beat myself up for that. But if like people who spent time with Jesus and like physically saw him perform miracles had doubts,
Yeah.
then, you know, it's just human, I think, to have them as well. So
Right.
at times.
Beautiful. Great, great, great. All right. What God is speaking to me, and this is what we're going to talk about tonight, is there's a lesson between two miracles that's taking place right now. So right before this, we have Jesus feeds the 5,000, right? So we have that whole story. So I do want to take the very last paragraph of that and then let that lead us into this story. So the very last paragraph, well, according to my, starting in verse 18, it says, bring them to me. This is Jesus says, bring them to me, he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Then it keeps going. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. What was Jesus's expectation of the disciples, of the 12? They just had this incredible miracle. And then he says, okay, get in the boat, take off.
Probably that they go get some rest.
That they would go get some rest.
Get some rest and leave and get away from these people. Oh, it's almost like, gee, I want you to get away from these people lest your faith be a little bit dismantled because you just experienced something so amazing.
Right. Okay. Okay. Did he expect them to make it to the other side?
Probably. Because yeah, because when it's kind of like when you say goodbye to somebody and they're like, I'm going home, you send them home, you expect that they're gonna get home, and you're like, hey, text me when you get home.
Right.
So he sent them off with the expectation that they were going to get to the other side.
Yes. He said, get in the boat, go to the other side. Basically, I'll meet you there. So Jesus gave them something that he fully expected them to be able to do. I'll meet you at the other side. I think there are times when God gives us things, he's like, Angel, I expect you to be able to do this. So you go ahead of me. I'll meet you there. So here we have the 12 who've just experienced this incredible miracle with Jesus. I even love the part where he breaks the loaves, but he gives it to the disciples and they give it to the people so that they can be a part of the miracle. He wants them to experience what it's like to be a part of the miracle. So when they get on that boat, they're full of faith. And he's like, all right, this is good. Now go over to the other side. I'll meet you there. What does he go and do during that brief period?
Say bye-bye to the people.
He dismisses the people and he goes and does something.
He
On
prays.
the mountainside to pray.
He goes to the mountainside to pray. So he goes on, he's like, okay, let me refill myself, right? Because they just poured out So he's refilling himself. He's sending the guys off to go do the same. Kind of what Brenda said, go get some rest. I'll meet you there. But they run into a problem on the way.
Mm.
How often, if you think about it, God says, God speaks to you in some kind of way. I want you to do this, or I need you to do this. But then you run into a problem
Mm.
along the way. What happens in those moments? You're all geared up, you're ready to go, whatever it might be. I'm going to go share with somebody, or I'm going to go start a business, or I'm going to go, and we feel totally infused by God. And then stuff happens along the way.
For me, sometimes
Doubt.
I start to question, wait a minute, was I supposed to do this? Did God really say?
Mhm.
Right? All of a sudden, you're like, wait, maybe. Brenda?
Going off on that, like, hey, text me when you get home. Like, you leave your friend's house, clear-minded and knowing I'm gonna get home, and then you're driving on the freeway, and all of a sudden, either there's an accident or you hit like bumper to bumper traffic. It's nighttime, and you're
Right.
going, gee, did I choose the right freeway? Should I have just stayed with my friend? When will I get home? So those are some of the things, like even when I'm going through, I knew that it was a predictable path. God sent me. This is predictable, like,
Yes.
and then I'm like, are you sure? Should I have, maybe there was another path that he was sending me and I thought this is the one. Yeah.
Yes. This was a predictable path. They were fishermen.
Mhm.
They've been across this lake a gazillion times. I went on this journey of just looking at, okay, how big was the lake? It was 8 miles wide. That's smaller than Lake Tahoe for those who live here, you know? So I'm going, wow. He expected this to be a short journey, meet me on the other side. And they got out in the lake. And then what happened?
The wind blew, the storm
Yeah.
came.
They came up against the winds, the storms. What kind of storms, what kind of winds do we come up against when we are on this mission for God, whatever it might be? And then we come up against the waves, or we come up against the wind. What did the winds do to the boat or to them?
Started sinking it, waving it, brushing it. They became very terrified. It terrified them, and they
Why do
lost
you,
courage.
yeah. Why do you think it terrified them? Again, these are guys who've been, I guarantee it's not the first storm they've ever been in.
Yeah, I think it was an unusual storm,
Hmm.
not a
Oh,
very
yeah.
common storm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Okay, Bridget, and then I'll come to Brenda.
Um, well, Jesus wasn't like physically with them this time, and then the other one I remember when they were on their way. I don't know if it was the same lake, but when he was sleeping, and then he told
Mhm.
the
Mm.
he calmed the storm, and
Mm.
Right.
but I feel like in that one too, like they were on their way to heal somebody, and then they ended up healing the guy that was like bound in chains, and
Mhm.
so that to me was like almost like the devil like opposition of like, no, you're not going to go save this person.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I don't know if that would be the same thing here,
Mm.
because it says that they were in trouble far away from land and a strong wind had risen and they were fighting heavy waves.
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever, I wrote down, they found themselves in something they couldn't quite get out of.
Mm.
You know, when you're working hard to try to get out of something, I'm sure they were rowing and
Mm.
rowing and rowing, and it wasn't working. What happens when what usually works no longer works? That
Mm.
takes us into a panic and a fear. Brenda.
Yeah. Oh, also it says in this version that
Mhm.
so that out there they came up on a headwind, which means that this wind is threatening to turn them back where they came from. And
Yes.
I'm also thinking of like, okay, so in so many different struggles, let's say like how like activism goes, you get this amazing win, right? And
Right.
then all of a sudden you're riding on that win, and then the backlash comes in, and it's
Right.
like threatening to just take you back to the very thing you fought for is now being threatened to be taken away.
Yes.
And that is just devastating.
Yeah. The wind obviously is representing Satan. Erica just put it in the chat where we are. So the wind, or Satan, is trying to turn them back around. As Brenda's pointing out, they're facing this headwind, and the whole point of it is, let me turn you back around.
Mhm.
So no matter how hard they were rowing or
Mhm.
working, they weren't getting anywhere. Now, did they turn back around?
Uh, no, because they were still in that mess when Jesus walks up.
Yes. Yes. So there was victory in it,
Mhm.
even though it seemed like a losing battle. There are times, guys, we're going to find ourselves stuck in things that will feel like a losing battle. But I'm looking at this and God is saying, but did you turn back around, BJ? Did you give up, BJ? Or are you still rowing? Sometimes the victory is in us keeping going. So even though they were rowing and they weren't getting anywhere, they were definitely exhausted because the wind was against them. So we have to look at, there was an unexpected encounter though, because Jesus expected them to meet him on the other side. When he looked out and saw them at a distance, struggling out there, then he decided, let me go out there and do something. Yes, Bridget.
Wouldn't he have known though that this was going to happen?
You tell me. We'll talk about that. Would he have known?
I mean, he knew, right? Like he's all knowing. So he would have known, like, I'm going to send them, tell them I'm going to meet them there, and this is going to happen.
Yes. Why would he do that? Mean, evil Jesus. No. Why do you guys think? Why would he do it?
Is it like a test of faith?
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the testing comes to develop our faith. So we
Mhm.
don't know who we are until we in, uncharted territory, so to speak, and it
Right.
develops our faith. So
Right. Good. I want to look at whose faith was he testing? There were 12 men on that boat. Erica,
Simon Peter.
why do you say?
Did you say why do I say that?
Yes, why did you say Simon Peter?
You mean why did I give him the two names?
No, no, no.
Or
Why are you
okay.
choosing him?
Because he ultimately gets out of the boat. Simon gets out of the boat and walks on water. And his faith was a little shaky. He turns the other way. And because I think the wind or the waves kind of got crazy. And that's when he started to go under, and Jesus pulls him out of the water.
Yes. What other instances do we see Simon Peter step out of his comfort zone in scripture?
Transfiguration.
He is the one highlighted here. Who was that? Brenda.
At the transfiguration, when he sees Elijah and Moses and Jesus, and he's like, hey.
Okay, so that's one. He steps up, go ahead. Isn't that? Where else do
when
we
he
see it?
when he cut off the ear of the guard,
He
you
cut
know,
off the ear of the guard. Okay, good. Bridget?
Later in Acts, when he does the healing of the guy that was asking for money, and then he's like, I don't have money, but I can give you.
Yes. Good. Angel, did you have a different one?
When I was gonna say when Jesus changed his name to Peter,
Mm-hmm.
when he, proclaimed that he was the Son of God, and you know, they changed his name to Peter. He changed his name to Peter.
Right.
Mhm.
Good. Brenda?
There's also when Jesus asks him 3 times, who am I? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter's like, my gosh, yes, I do. So
Yes. I started this out by saying there's a lesson between two miracles. There's a
Mm,
lesson going on in this. And I believe we often overlook it because we get so focused on the miracles. We tend to live from miracle to miracle. That's our desire. We go, ooh, faith of 5,000. Woo, he walked on water. He did. But what was the lesson in between? Jesus was getting him ready really for his calling. Peter was one of 12, and he was always, in many cases, the one out of the 12 that took a chance and took the risk. And all of those different instances everybody just mentioned, it was because Peter was willing to step out and take the risk. This was in preparation for where God was about to take him, to the Gentiles. We're taking you out, way out there. We're taking you way out of your comfort zone. So we're going to start with you just stepping out of the boat. There was a lesson in there. And I was looking at this. God is going, BJ, you are between two miracles. I need you to learn a lesson right now. There's something I need you to see, something I need you to become comfortable with. Peter had to get comfortable with being one out of 12. What do I mean by that? Why do you think being one out of the 12 would be a difficult thing?
you can be the teacher's pet, you get picked on all the time. Others might start looking at you differently. Maybe jealousy could come around, but yet also you don't want to be the one who's always favored, in a way, quote unquote, favored, whether it's good favor or not. So it kind of can mess with you. It can really mess with your self-esteem, or you can start doubting even your strengths and all that.
Yeah. It's much easier to go with the crowd. Peter was a boat rocker. I'm sure every time he stood up, they're like, sit down, the storm is already, you're rocking the boat. Peter was a boat rocker. He was disruptive. He spoke up many times when others would not. It was just, he was that guy out of the 12 that everybody probably went, oh, here's Peter again. Oh, here he goes again. Sometimes God calls us to be disruptors. He says, sometimes you're going to be a boat rocker, which means you're going to have to leave behind the other 11.
Mm,
And that's hard for us because there's comfort, there's security in the group. And when you have to step out from what I call that herd mentality, it's much
mm,
easier to travel with the herd. So out of all those people, as much as we laugh about Peter and talk about him being all over the place, he was the only one who walked on water with Jesus. Why? He was willing to step away from the herd. I want you to think about whatever God has you going through right now. Are there areas in your life where he's saying, I need you to step away? Are you traveling where it's nice and comfortable? But yet I need you to do something that's going to desire or that's going to call you to step out of comfort. I need you to do something where maybe your friends aren't necessarily in agreement. We don't hear anywhere in here where the group got together and said, okay, who's going to go out of the boat? There's nowhere that there's no discussion.
mhm.
When they saw Jesus walk on water, what was the response?
It's a ghost.
All of them felt the same. Who is this? Who is this? What is this? Even though they had just been with him.
Mhm.
But I love what Christy said in the beginning. Peter recognized what?
His voice.
Jesus' voice.
His voice. His
And he
voice.
also was sacrificial enough to take the risk, like, okay, if the voice is, what if it's an augmented voice and you think that's Jesus and you walk onto the water? So he took the risk of like, hey, I will die or I will sink, whatever, so you guys can be protected.
Yeah. Yes, he did. Erica.
He took on the servant role.
Right. Right. Erica.
I also think this is really interesting how he said, bid me come unto thee on the water. Like if he was testing Jesus, it's like, if it's really you, then you'll have me go onto the water. And it's amazing how Jesus really wanted to make sure that he believed and that it was clear to Simon Peter and all the other people on that boat that it really was him, because it's like Jesus he was already walking on the water, right? What else could he have done to make them believe other than put one of them in that position themselves? Do you see what I'm
Yes.
saying? Because that's where
Yes.
our faith, like, we have a hard time with our faith until something like so insane actually happens to us that it's
Right.
undeniable.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Simon Peter. I've been watching The Chosen. I mentioned that in our last Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my favorite episode. They featured this part of the Bible, this story. But what I didn't really care for was the fact that they did this build up about Simon Peter and how his wife and him had a miscarriage. I thought that really happened until I dug into the story. So thank you guys for the context of the ways that Simon Peter was actually, his faith really was tested biblically. Because I was searching for that and I just didn't really know where to find that.
Yeah.
I wondered, had his faith been tested in the Bible throughout? So
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Erica brings up some good stuff. I've done a study on this before, not with this group, on just the Jesus feeding the 5,000. And he's trying to build their faith. He is testing them. He's trying to build their faith. And this is really an extension of that. And for Peter to say, bid me to come out onto the water, Peter understood that God was a God of the impossible. Jesus had just shown them, I can do the impossible, and you can do the impossible with me. That's what the feeding of the 5,000, when he put it in their hands, he was showing them, yes, I can do the impossible, but so can you with me. So that's why I believe Peter said, if that's you, you do the impossible. Bid me to come, not just you walk on water, because that he understood. You called me out there. Erica.
just very quickly, I've started a Bible study with my friend. It's just the two of us where we talk about the Bible and we switch who's going to lead. And the topic I chose last week was this story. So it's really interesting that we're doing it again. And this is specifically what I chose to take a deep dive into, was the fact that prior to my faith journey, had always heard about how Jesus had walked on water. But when I started reading this story, I'm like, wait a second, it wasn't just Jesus who walked on water. He had one of his disciples walk on water too. I never realized that. And we talked about exactly what you just pointed to, how anything is possible through God. With God, you can do anything. You can even walk on water.
Yes, great, great. Christy, I saw your hand, or at least I think I did.
Oh, no, what Erica was just sharing reminded me, because I listened to the deep dive from 2 weeks ago. And when you were talking about because I am what the I am,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and so Peter was starting to realize that it's like, oh, because Jesus is doing this, he could have me do it. And so one of the thoughts I was just having was just, I think Jesus, especially with Peter, because you were asking earlier, like when you got to be the one out of the 12, like I think Peter was getting it, like with Jesus, he had to learn to expect the unexpected. It was like Jesus was training all the disciples just to be counterintuitive. Like, don't get stuck in the rut of this is the way things go, you know, or this is, you know, like even with rowing their boat across the water, but then also just going in the faith that you have. Like if you go in the faith that you have, then God will fill in the rest, you know. And then the last thing was that like confidence comes when we recognize his voice, when we know because I think sometimes what gets in the way is the naysayers, like, you know, where people are, oh, that's interesting. You're going to really try to do that? Wow. Okay. You know, but it's like, okay, if I know, I have a knowing that this is what God is calling me to do, you know, it may seem impossible or just improbable to someone else when I say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go walk on water, because that's what we're doing when we live by faith, you know.
Right.
And so the
Right.
confidence comes when we're connected to the one that's calling us out of the norm.
Yes. Thank you. I love this. We get out of our relationship with God what we put into it. We had 12 guys. All 12 of them could have walked on water that day,
Mm.
but only one of them stepped out on the faith that he had. The others sat back, terrified, because all 12 were, according to the scripture, they saw it, they were terrified. It's a ghost.
Mm.
But then from there, we have to make a choice. What do we do when God shows up and he looks different from how we expected him to show up? The Jesus that they saw on the shore
Mm.
in human flesh form, walking around with them, feeding the people, showed up different in troubled times. Sometimes Jesus will show up, or God will show up differently to us in troubled times. We have to know his voice enough to respond. Otherwise, we would all simply say, it's a ghost. I'm not going to do it. I can't do anything until God tells me or God comes and move me.
Mhm.
I can't move. You know, I had a sister I was sharing with this last week, and she was sharing with me all of what she's struggling with and tears and, you know, and I said, well, I think God is trying to get you to make a move. You've been sitting here waiting for God to come and pick you up from this location and move you over here to safety, when just like in the beginning of this, Jesus expected them to make it to the other side. That's why he said immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side. In other words, what I'm calling you to is not impossible for you.
Mm.
Yes, I'm going to put some storms in your way in the middle just to reveal some stuff. But to begin with, he's saying, what I'm asking you to do right now is not impossible. I think there are times, guys, God asks us to do things, we make it impossible. He doesn't. We do. Think about something in your life God's asked you to do. You go, oh, no way. There is no way I can do that. That is it. Without God intervening and picking me up, I cannot do that. Think about it. Have you ever had something where you felt like it's impossible? It's impossible for me to do this. Any examples? And they don't have to necessarily be spiritual. I mean, I think about, as I'm sharing it, stepping out on a limb and deciding I'm going to move to New York from Dallas, Texas, and become a star. I'm like, who thinks that? You know what I mean? It's one of those dreams that you go, okay, very, very few can actually do that. But there was
Mhm.
something inside that said, I'm one of the few.
Mhm.
And then you get there, and then you get the strong winds coming against you. Everything that makes you say, you know what, maybe I should pack up my bags and go back to Dallas.
Mm.
What have you faced that God has said, I believe you can get there, but you weren't so sure you could get to the other side because of the strong winds against you? Angel.
Well, obviously I'm still working on this, but um, I think even 8 to 10 months ago, I didn't believe that I could heal from a lot of things that I've been through in my life, or mistakes that I've made in my life.
Mm.
Um, I didn't think I could ever go a day without thinking about it and without, hurting myself over it and talking down to myself over it. I didn't think any amount of healing was possible. I thought I was just going to live in that pain for the rest
Right.
of my life. And just last night, I was praying and I was like, I've something came up like in my brain while I was praying, and I was like, wow, I haven't thought about that in like a few weeks. And that
Mm,
used to plague me every day of
Mhm.
my life and never leave my mind. And also like just my mindset around it changing, like showing me that I have healed from it, because instead of talking down to myself or beating myself up, it was like, wow, you've come a long way now. Like you've really like changed and turned and repented against this, and really changed your heart, not just the way you move. And yeah, I never thought that that was possible for me.
Right.
I'm still
Right.
struggling with that, but I'm starting to accept like God can heal me. And yeah, that was never possible in my head before.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Again, the rowing. She's still rowing. The wind is
mm,
still beating against her, but she's still rowing, because the whole point of that wind, as Brenda pointed out in the beginning, is to make you turn around and go back. As long as she doesn't turn around and go back, she will make it to the other side. They got to the other side, which we'll look at in a moment, but they had to endure some stuff in the middle. So
mhm,
often we lose our faith in the middle. Like I said, we love to go from miracle to miracle, but life isn't that way. We live life in the middle. So we have to get used to God saying, you can get to the other side, but you're going to hit some wind, some strong waves. I need you to know my voice. I need you to take the risk. I need you to keep going. And He will show up when you really are drowning. Now, there were times they probably felt earlier on, but He waited
mm.
until almost daybreak to actually show up. Why do you think?
Hmm.
That could seem cruel, because it says he kind of watched from the from the side, saw him straining.
Like going off of what Erica had said, since he had been training them to be faithful, I think as a good rabbi, he needed to allow them some time to first battle this on their own.
Yeah.
And before he comes, he's like a good rabbi, a good parent, like, hey, I've given you the tools. I I know that you can do this, and I'll come alongside you when I see
Yes.
you really need me.
Yeah. Christy, thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it takes time to develop and I guess build endurance, not just in a like a physical situation, because that was very physical, but it was
Mm-hmm.
also very mental and
Mm-hmm.
emotional and spiritual. And so it's like if we want to develop all of those, our whole being, if Jesus steps in too soon, we're half baked, and that's not gonna serve us or anyone else. And
Right.
so we could feel like, save me. I mean, he literally waited till Peter was sinking, and Peter actually said, save me. He didn't just reach out and grab him. It's like, I think he wants us to know who we are. And do we
Yes.
really depend and rely on him? We think we do until we're tested. The test is for us. So it's not him being
Yes.
cruel. It's like you need to know. So now that you know, you can overcome this and know that I'm
Right.
not against you. This is for your own good.
Yes. I love that. You said he wants us to know who we are. We saw Peter start to show himself. He stepped out of the boat. He's like, tell me to come. In other words, I know if you I am, then I am too. Tell me to come, do this. And we see that. But then even once he gets out there, he wavers. That's to show us just because we make a solid decision at one point doesn't mean we don't keep making solid decisions of faith. Peter made the decision to call out. Peter made the decision to step out of the boat. And then once he got out there, what did he do? What did he do?
he took his eyes off Jesus. He started paying attention to what was around him.
Yes, it just shows it is possible for us to go, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I believe, and I'm going for it.
Mm.
And then we get out there and we're in unfamiliar territory. And all of a sudden it's like, wait,
Mhm.
wait.
Mhm.
Erica, what are you going to share?
I think it's, I mean, we could really dissect how he said, save me, because, you know, everybody thought maybe this is a ghost, maybe this isn't really Jesus.
Mm.
But Simon Peter had faith that it was Jesus. He steps out onto the water, but then he begins to sink. At that point, I would think that your faith would really be tested, because it's like, I've already shown you that I believed it was you, and now you're letting me sink into the water. It
Mhm.
must not be Jesus. But he still believed even after that, because he didn't ask the people in the boat to save
Mhm.
him. He asked Jesus to save him. He still
Right.
knew. And I think that speaks about volumes, because how many times have we been faithful and we're like, okay, God, I don't know about this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump. I'm
Mm.
going to go for it. And then it doesn't go according to your plans and you're tested. And it's like, well, maybe he didn't really want me to do that.
Mhm.
He
Mm.
usually stop there, but Simon Peter did not stop there. He just pressed on and said, save me. He sought Jesus even harder.
Mm.
Right.
And there's, I mean, that's a lot in the Bible. I think, I don't know, maybe this is a verse in the Bible. I'm not as well versed as you all where I have all of them memorized, but seek and ye shall find. I don't know. Is that a
Mm.
Yes,
biblical
it
Yeah,
verse?
it
is.
is Matthew
Um,
7.
But it literally is, if you call out to me and you seek me, I am here. I am here. You just have to seek me.
Mm.
Erica, it's so beautiful just watching your faith blossom. This is so
Mhm.
exciting to see. Christy.
No, yes, I appreciate everything you just said, Erica. I was just think it made me think about like that we shouldn't dismiss the steps of faith that we do take, because when we take those steps of faith and we hit those wins and then we start doubting, we even dismiss the steps we did take. I mean, for Peter to literally walk on water, most people focus on the fact that he sunk.
Mhm.
Like, oh, well, he walked on water, but he sunk.
Mhm.
And so we can focus on, but the thing is, we don't know the length or the width of our faith until we start walking. And so
Right.
where he began to sink, it's like, oh, we can look at that as a negative, or okay, this is where my faith ended, but at the same time, like, we still have our part to do.
Mm.
Like, we have a choice. Okay, am I going to give up here, or am I going to grind forward? Jesus,
Yeah.
help me to go past this point, because this is as far as I can go on my own.
Right.
Mm.
Beautiful. Good. Brenda.
As Erica was talking about how Peter, when he began to sink, he called on not the people in the boat, but on Jesus. And it made me think of like, okay, so Peter was not dumb. He saw that he's sinking, but Jesus is still standing like as if on dry ground. And he's like, well, who's on dry ground right now? So it's kind of like, it makes me think of like, even in us well, because you know how we talk about the foundation, like focus on a good foundation, and also setting so I fix my eyes on Jesus, and I'm not gonna turn this way and that way, because I know that that is solid. He's standing on solid ground no matter whether I'm wavering. He is. So therefore I am going to just call on him, and he's gonna be the one I anchor my little whatever on, to my faith on, to keep being pulled out of this mark that I'm sinking in.
Yes. Very good. Chrissy.
Just a thought I just had that I hadn't had before, but I was just, because the scripture, it doesn't say, but like, once, he began to sink and then Jesus reached out to, grab his hand or whatever. Like, I'm like, oh, so does that mean Peter walked back to the boat? It doesn't say, but it didn't say Jesus carried him to the boat. he, fireman carried him. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
once he
Right.
reached out, once he put his eyes back on Jesus, grabbed his hand, I imagine they walked to the boat together.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yes. He walked on water. Bottom line is he walked on water. Interesting question. Can Peter swim?
I would hope so.
Yes, because he was a fisherman.
He's in a boat a lot. You should probably know how to swim.
I wondered that. I mean, like, I assumed he hadn't, but that's a good point that he was a fisherman. You would like think he could, but I wondered this too. I'm like, because I was going to point out BJ, which I'm sure this is where you're headed. If let's assume he did know how to swim, why didn't he try to save himself? And it seems as though he didn't. Instead, he asked Jesus, which I think God's constantly trying to tell us, stop trying to take control of the situation. I've got you.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I thought about when, more than likely Peter could swim. But I think when I look at this, it says that in verse 30, when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to swim.
Mhm.
Mm.
When we get fearful, we forget even what we know.
Mhm.
I'm going, Peter probably just went into panic. He saw the wind, he got afraid, and what he knew just went out of his head. Have you ever been there where you go, I know what to do. I know what to do. And I just couldn't grab onto it.
Mhm.
It's so human. As I
Yes.
read through, I'm going, it is so human. There are times when I'll have conversations in my head and go, man, you knew not to do that. Or, man, why didn't you just walk away? It's like you can replay it in your head. But when it's right up on you, you just kind of freeze. I
Yeah.
don't know what to do. So he just kind of started sinking. Then said, Jesus saved me. Of course, he knew who to call upon. But I want us to see, and that kind of what Eric is saying, it's almost God's way of keeping us from relying upon ourselves. Just as human, we have this fright mechanism and we go,
Mm.
and God's like, good. Now you can't rely upon your ability to swim.
Mm.
Now you can't rely upon whatever that is, BJ's ability to talk her way out of a situation. We all have that something where we can maneuver our way out of crazy circumstances. But if we become afraid enough, that freeze mechanism comes in and it makes us go, Jesus, save me. God, save me. It's like I always say, there are no atheists in a car accident. When people in a car accident, you cry out God, you cry out Jesus in a heartbeat because you don't know what else to do. And it was just interesting as I was going through this week, I'm going, I bet Peter could swim. But there's no mention of him seeing the wind, becoming afraid, and swimming. He saw the wind, he became afraid, he started to sink. Christy.
Yeah, it just makes me think about like the things that God calls us out of our comfort zone to do. And we because we're dependent on him, we're able to start the process. But I think at some point when our humanistic thinking comes back, our logic comes back into play, it could go, whoa, I should not be doing this. Like, what am I doing? And I know for me, my tendency is to start trying to self-sabotage. I don't know where it comes from, but it's like, why would I sabotage at this point? Look how far I've come. But like you said, BJ, it's like when we start to become self-reliant, we realize, oh, yeah, this is not something I should or can do without God, but I start getting that confidence. Oh, thanks for the push start, So yeah, but I think the amazement can cause the fear that freezes because it's not always afraid of drowning per se, but it's the fear of I should not be here in a way that's like, God, I should not be here.
Yes. Yes. And they should not have been in an opposite. Thank you, Christy. They should not have found themselves in that situation. They were fishermen.
Mm,
crossing over a lake that was only 8 miles wide. And even with the winds, they're like, surely the 12 of us can get through this.
mm,
Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where you go, I shouldn't be here. After
mm,
all of these hours, I'm still rowing and I'm not getting anywhere. Whether that's I'm trying to get somewhere in my career and I'm not getting
mhm,
anywhere. I just feel stuck. Why is this not working? That was really the situation that they found themselves in. That was the lesson between the two miracles. How do you handle when life puts you in a situation where you're stuck in a situation that you shouldn't be in, or you think, I should be further than this by now? If they had been rowing all night long, they should have been beyond 8 miles.
mm,
But that's the kind of thing that eats at us. I should have been married by now. I should have been
mhm,
promoted by now. I should have been, and that stuff can haunt us.
Yeah.
When God is saying, find me, there's a lesson in between that I need you to grab onto. Stop going from miracle to miracle. Those are the feel goods.
mm,
But if we just live from the miracle to the miracle, wow, he walked on water. Yes, he did. Wow, he fed the 5,000. Yes, he did. But what was that lesson
mm,
that he had to learn in between? Because that lesson is what carried him through the rest of his life. When Peter had to go to the Gentiles and preach to that nation against all of his counterparts,
mhm,
I'm sure he reflected back to, I had to step out of a boat.
mm,
Where I'm sure the other 11 was going, dude, what you doing? Sit down. You're rocking the
mm,
boat. What are you thinking? He had to be the disruptor because God was training him for the disruptor he was going to have to be later on down the road. So while we're hanging between the miracles, we really need to search and go, God, what is the lesson? There's a lesson of my life that you're trying to show me right now.
mm.
Let me focus on grabbing that more so than grabbing whatever the miracle is that you're trying to take me out of and take me into. What do you think the other 11 in the boat got out of this scene? Let's talk about them just a little bit. We got Peter and we see all of what he's learning and going through. What did the other 11 get?
They're real because I think they had been on the border of like, is he really who he says he is? But at the end, they're like, wow, you truly are the son of God. Hold on, let me
Mm-hmm. In
read
verse
it.
33.
Yes, they say they were astonished and they worshipped him, saying, truly you are the son of God. So just by this, Peter's courage to take that risk sharpened their faith and I mean, it solidified their belief
Mm-hmm.
in God. And it's interesting because you had told us to read John 6, right?
Like sent it
And
to the other one.
yeah, and in John 6, when he does all these miracles and he challenges them, a lot of his disciples left. They were like, you know what? Nah, we're not. So they no longer followed him. But these 12, because of what they had experienced, they continued to hold on fast on him, and they believe that he's the Son of God.
Yeah. Yes. Erica.
Why were they no longer following him? Is it because they felt like he wasn't doing
He
anything
was
for
too
them?
radical. It was a little too
Yeah.
much for them.
Because they even said, isn't this the son of Joseph? And then they stopped because after this miracle, but still in John 6, we
Mm-hmm.
see another story where Jesus now goes back to his town in Capernaum. And then that's when he's doing so many radical things, and it's just so uncomfortable for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they no longer follow him. But these guys, having been on that boat, uh, just was so transformative that they stayed with Jesus.
Mhm. It just shows we can all be in the presence of Jesus, but we don't all get the same thing from Jesus. Even
Mhm.
what you guys are talking about, Brenda's saying, this started out wherever Jesus was, large crowds of people followed him. So God began to weed out the people. They stopped following him because it was too radical, too much. And it narrowed down to his 12, excuse me, his 12 guys. But even amongst the 12, you have those who are a little bit more on the cutting edge than others.
Mhm.
You know, we worship God collectively,
Mhm.
but we worship God individually. Peter got more from Jesus because he invested more. The other guys got a great lesson that day because when Jesus walked back on the water, whether he was carrying Peter or
Mm.
just walking hand in hand, they were watching this thing. And when they stepped onto the boats, the wind stopped, right? That
Mm.
shows this was a controlled exercise. This whole thing was a controlled lesson.
Mm.
So I'm sure you got the 11 on the boat going, what? Oh, so you just did this to, oh man, I could have walked on water, but you didn't.
Mm.
Peter did. Erica.
I think it's interesting that he didn't stop the wind before he got on the boat. He waited until he was in the boat with the others. It was to me that is symbolic of when you have God with you, all of
Mhm.
us. I'm here in this boat with everybody. Everything's going to
Mm.
be okay now.
Mm.
Yes, that was the lesson Peter got by faith,
Mm.
meaning he was willing to step out of the boat and Jesus is with me, right? I am,
Mm.
and therefore I am. He
Mm.
got that lesson and was willing to step out of the boat. The others received that lesson once Jesus came back into the boat.
Mm.
Some of you believe because you see,
Mm.
but blessed are those who believe who do not see. Peter
Mm.
didn't see, but he walked out there. Once he got on the boat, they saw it and went, oh, truly you are.
Mm.
God is showing us that we can all be in the same church, in the same building, listen to the same lesson, but we don't all get the same thing. It
Mm.
really comes down to how far on your faith are you willing to step? Am I going to sit back comfortably and just listen until God, you come take my hand personally? Okay, you got me? Okay, now I go. Or am I going to step out and do something with it? I think I saw Brenda and then I saw Christy.
I was also thinking about how the collective celebrate, like sometimes or a lot of times, God is doing things so that I'm not just the one to celebrate and worship Him, but within the community, my community, the collective I'm in, they also get to experience what He has done in my life on their behalf, because then my faith is also going to encourage and inspire their faith to continue on.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
Yes. Christy. Thanks, Brenda.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like there's a huge difference between observation versus experience. Like
Mm,
Peter got to experience Jesus. The 11 got to observe
mm,
Peter experiencing Jesus. And even though like we can be inspired, you know, but until we decide to take our step out of the boat, we will never experience God the way just observing,
yes.
you know.
Yeah. And that really, honestly, our takeaway tonight is to get to really what everyone is saying. As Brenda is pointing out, God wants all of us to get him.
Mm.
He came for a specific lesson, I believe, for Peter, but everybody fed. It was him feeding the 5,000. He was feeding
Mhm.
the 12.
Mhm.
By working with the one, he was feeding the 12. He was like, you saw the miracle I did here? Let me show you the miracle I'm doing here. Every one of you, your hearts are going to be changed. Your mindset's going to be changed by what you see right now. But his heart and mindset is really going to be changed. Why? He stepped. He's telling every one of us, we all have the ability to step. Every one of us have the ability to step outside of our boats, whatever they are. We can sit back and just collectively take in Jesus and be okay with that. Nothing wrong with it. But he's saying, I've got so much more to give you if you individually step out and let me touch you and take you where I want to take you. I love the lesson. Again, the deep dive of all of these is how can we read between the lines? But those of us who've been in the word for a long time, we know, I talk about Jesus walking on water and we go, yeah. Peter walked on water. Yeah, but he sank. As Christy pointed out, it's so easy to just rattle off these things. But if you read between the lines, you go, oh, but there was a lesson in there. A lesson not just for Peter, but a lesson for us. We are the ones still following. As Brenda was pointing out, there were a lot of people who followed, who fell, they disappeared. It was too much. But we are the ones who are saying, no, it's not too much. I believe in you and I'm following you to the end. Now, let's be Peter. Let's go even further. It's not enough just to say, I love him and I believe in him. He's saying, do you believe in me enough to step out of your boat? Step into the uncomfortable. Step into the thing that's probably going to scare you to a point where you're going to forget what you know how to do. And allow me to save you and then take you to the next level. Amen?
Amen.
Give me some feedback. What are you guys thinking? Familiar story, different stuff. Chrissy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, this is just one more example of how, like everything that Jesus did or said was for a reason, but like, I guess, depending on where we are, we're either just gonna observe again, or am I gonna seek to find out, okay, what was the lesson? Because there's always a lesson. Everything was like you said, it was what did you call it? A, I want to say object lesson for lack of, because I can't remember what you said, but he knew what he was doing. It was all planned,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so when we walk through our life and, whether it's a miracle or a challenge, if we don't take the time to see, okay, God, what is it that you want me to see in this? Because I'm focusing on the details, but that's not the point. The point is, what are
Right.
you trying to teach me? And that's our role to seek that out.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I always say everything that we go through with God is a setup to get us to look up. He's going, it's just a setup. This whole encounter was a setup to get them to look up. Look beyond you, look beyond your ability, look beyond your circumstances. It's a setup so that you will look up. That's why when he stepped on the boat, everything stopped. Are you surviving the setup? Or are you freaking out in the setup and giving up because you're not focused up above, you're focused on all the things around you? Remember when he saw the wind? When he saw the wind, who sees wind? But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. He began to sink. It was a setup to see, are you going to look up or are you going to look around? We tend to look around. Bridget, I saw somebody's hand, or at least I thought I did. Bridget.
I feel like I had to be reminded in this a bunch of times, like, and you brought it up like, well, but it was really easy to miss that lesson in between because they were rowing and then you're like, oh, he walked on water and, Peter sank and all that stuff. But I think, for me, I really needed this lesson today because I feel like I'm rowing, but I also feel like I'm sinking at the same time.
Mm.
So I think it's just a reminder, like you said, to keep going and like
Going.
what it looked like to step out. But I also
Mm.
sometimes that's like that difficult part of like, okay, do I step out in this and like, did God really say that? Or,
Mm.
am I just moving on my own volition because I'm impulsive or I want to control something and not? So I feel like wrestling with that a little bit more is what I need to do. But
Yeah.
I think I just thank you. I was at the point of wanting to give up this week.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep rowing. The thing about rowing is exhausting. If
Yeah.
anybody's ever, it's exhausting. So don't row alone. I know you reach out to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't row alone. There are times when you have to have it pause and take a breather. In those pauses, though, the wind will push us back. The whole thing is, as I said before, they didn't give up. So maybe, Bridget, there were times when you're going to have to go, I can't row any further. And it's going to push you back half a mile. And then when you get that wind, you start rowing again.
Mm.
You know what I mean? The whole point is, as the head wins, as Brenda pointed out in the beginning, the goal of it is to get you to turn around and go back. Your victory is not in your getting over there as quickly as you can. Your victory is that you're not turning around and going back.
Mhm.
So I think you just got to get really clear on what your victory is right now. Everyone in this story had a different victory.
Mm.
Peter's victory was not the same as the 11 on the boat. And the 11 on the boat had a different victory based on how they saw things. So don't let there be just one victory that you hold in your mind's eye, Bridget, because it can confine you and go, if the victory is, I made it out of this storm and whew, it's over, it might take a while. We don't know how long it took for this all to take place. So we can't put a time on it. The danger is we want to put a time on it. And God is like, I just need you to rejoice in the victory, no matter how small it might seem. Rejoice in the victory and be okay with that. And then as you keep praying, I love how Erica pointed it out. Peter said, if it is you, bid me to come and walk on water. You probably need to study. I'm sorry, guys, this became a personal thing. Study out God, what does it mean for me? I'm asking you to bid me to come out of the boat when it's time. So maybe I need to study out what that means, what that looks like, so that I'm clearer when that time comes. Okay? Just an aside. I'm sorry.
No, it's
Anyone
fine.
else?
No. As they say in the military, go on.
Go
Go
on.
on. We're here. Go on.
Go on.
Thank you. Sorry,
You're
everybody.
welcome.
Bridget, this is me giving you a big
There we
hug.
go. We're all
Like really big,
we're
big,
all
big,
hugging
big,
you.
big, big, big hug.
I know God speaks to all of us in different ways, but for me, I just ask him to give me a word,
Mm.
and he puts a word in my mind, and it's this is this sorry, I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but it's been so incredible the way that he has so clearly spoken to me. It's a word oftentimes that I've never heard and don't even know what it is. And I will be asking him a very specific question. And then I search the word online, and it will happen to be a Hebrew word that is directly connected to exactly, like very specifically answering my question.
Mm.
And that's how he speaks to me.
Mm.
Also, sometimes I'll just like randomly flip to a page of my Bible when something's heavy on my heart, and the answer is very specific right there in front of my eyes to what I'm seeking. But I know he speaks to all of us in different ways. I'm grateful that he's so clear with me.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I'm just sharing that in case
Yeah.
anybody else wants to give it a go.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that's we said Peter didn't recognize what he looked like, but he knew his voice.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. What basically what Eric is saying is, I know his voice for me.
Mhm.
And I'm saying, Bridget, find his voice for you.
Mhm.
Because when Peter said, if it's you, bid me to come out on water, and Jesus simply used one word. He said, come. He stood on the word that Jesus proclaimed. So we have to know his voice. We have to know how he speaks to us. Because as I was saying at some point, he shows up differently.
Mhm.
Sometimes we hold God captive because we expect him to show up the same way. Excuse me. We saw him before. And he said,
Yeah.
no. Mm-mm-mm. He showed up as a ghost or what appeared to be a ghost. Will we recognize him when he shows up if he shows up differently? That's the difference between religiosity, which can get us in trouble. We can get religious and we expect God to show up all saintly in a certain way. And he showed up at times overturning tables. And you know what I mean? He shows up in
Yeah.
a way that would make your mind go, wait a minute. But if you know his voice, you can say, if it's you, Lord, bid
Mhm.
me to come. He will answer. Erica.
And also, when you were talking about victories and, knowing when you've reached your victory, I think the victory is not for us to determine because there have been so many times, and that's why I had a hard time answering your question earlier. Because I've been through so many stages in my life where I thought the victory was in sight and things were getting tough. But what I didn't realize is that was not the victory. God had
Mhm.
other plans for me, and it's all leading. Even still, I'm still going, and I know there's something really big. I know it. And
Mm.
so I think when things aren't working out for the victory you have in your mind, I don't think it means it's a sign necessarily to stop. I think we keep going unless, at least this is how I treat it. I think we keep moving, we keep rowing, and God will clearly communicate to us. He will always veer us on the right path. I sometimes I think we try to overthink it. It's like, well, this
Yeah.
victory isn't working out, so maybe I should stop. No, don't stop because that's not even the victory. You're still getting somewhere. It's just you can't even envision what it is because it's so big.
Yeah. And that's why I pointed out in the beginning, and I think I saw your hand, Angel. Hold on. That's why I was pointing out in the beginning. When Jesus said, go over to the other side, I'll meet you there. He expected them to get there. It was also, again, 8 miles across. That means they could see the land on the other side. We look at that and go, well, the victory is getting there. But the victory was actually everything in between. It's almost an afterthought if we keep reading. Right at the end, it's in verse 34. When they had crossed over, they landed at the place they were headed to. It was almost an afterthought. If it was the victory, that would have been, whoo, they landed. That was not even really, that was just a minor part of the whole setup. The victory was all the stuff in between. When we avoid the in between, the messy stuff in the middle, we're missing the victory. We're so busy trying to get to the land. He's going, you don't even know. That's just an afterthought that I threw into verse 34. The victory was what Peter learned, what they all learned being on the boat, what Jesus did. So many juicy parts in between. Okay? Angel, did I see your hand? Were you just shifting your
Yeah.
glasses?
Yeah, I think that this lesson specifically has been, in my mind, very cohesive with, what Kai's been talking about at church, like transformation and spiritual
Mhm.
maturity. And what I love so much about the Bible in general is that we really get to see that these journeys aren't linear and they're like people make a lot of mistakes along the way. And even the people that you hold to such high esteem, um, for their faith, and that they, you know, even sink sometimes, you know, and like growing in maturity comes with all of the challenges too. And when you say like it's a lot of it's in hindsight, like there's so many things that I didn't realize got me here, but now that I look back, I'm like, oh, that was horrible at the time, but it really like got me to where I can handle things that are going on right now in a different way. And I relate a lot to what you've said, Bridget, too, of, you know, like I've had a lot of moments in my life where I really like felt like giving up, and somehow God just brings the right conversation or the right person or the right thing in my path to like help me strive forward. So um I I just hope that, like, you know, this always encourages all of us, and you know, also like to any of you, but also, like I said, I know Bridget got emotional. Like if you ever need an ear or a prayer or somebody to pray with, I'm open to that. And I just hope that it's been really encouraging to me. So, and I relate to just it just happening in the right moment. So
Yeah.
Bridget.
I was just gonna say, Bridget, I don't know if I have your number, but I might ask from DJ. But I'm here, like Angel said, I'm here if you want to pray or just talk through things right here. If you want a card sent to you in the mail that's written personally, it will come to you in the mail. Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yes, I love the community this has become. So this exactly answer to my prayer is that everybody has something that we can pour into each other. I get just as much out of these as you guys do. So thank you for being a part of it. I think we've kind of exhausted this topic for tonight. But again, I want us to see how we can take something so familiar. And if you really take the time and pull it apart, God speaks. He speaks in between the lines. He speaks between the sentences. He speaks between the words. Don't let the Bible become boring. The Bible isn't boring. We are. So take the time, strip through it. If you're a word person, I know Christy is, and I know Eric is, let those words speak. Because that's God saying, now go look this up. Now, what is this saying? Now, where is this taking you? It's like he will take you on the journey. And I think it's a fascinating journey. So, anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for being there for each other. And Bridget, you tell me if you want me to put your number out there, so I'll let people know. But we will be talking. All right, everybody?
Yeah.
Love you. Good
Thank
night.
Thank you.
all
Love you.
right.
Thanks so much,
Good night.
BJ. Love you, ladies.
Safe travels, Angel.
Thank you
Yes,
so
Yes.
please
much.
be careful.
I will. Thank you.